SHOCKWAVE. Alberta's independence push collides with BC's pipeline roadblock. The political landscape in Canada is heating up as Alberta's growing push for independence and sovereignty faces a formidable challenge from British Columbia's staunch opposition to pipeline development. This clash is not just about energy infrastructure. It embodies a deeper struggle over Western Canadian rights, economic futures, and federal-provincial relations under the new leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney, who took office following the April 28, 2025 snap federal election. Alberta, long a powerhouse in oil and gas, finds itself increasingly frustrated by what it sees as deliberate obstruction from Ottawa and BC Premier David Eby. Despite Eby's recent softening tone on pipeline projects, claiming concerns only about public money being spent, the reality is that many Albertans view this as disingenuous. The province is demanding more than just vague reassurances. It wants the freedom to develop its resources without Ottawa's heavy hand or BC's regulatory roadblocks. The Trans Mountain Pipeline saga epitomizes these tensions. Originally a private venture by Kinder Morgan, the project was mired in federal delays and regulatory red tape, forcing the company to walk away after investing over $1 billion. The federal government then nationalized the pipeline, ballooning costs to $30 billion, triple the original estimate, and saddling taxpayers with a financial burden. This move alienated many Canadians, especially Albertans, who preferred private sector solutions over government control. Mark Carney's government presents itself as a champion of nation-building, yet critics argue his history and policies tell a different story. As former UN Special Envoy for Climate, Carney has advocated for keeping 80% of fossil fuels in the ground and labeled gas-powered infrastructure as stranded assets. This climate-driven stance clashes sharply with Alberta's resource-dependent economy. Observers like Chris Sims, Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and veteran columnist Lorne Gunter warn that Ottawa's approach amounts to orchestrated failure, creating barriers so stringent that private investors retreat, then blaming the market for a lack of interest. The stalled Energy East pipeline is a cautionary tale. Shifting federal regulations killed a multi-billion-dollar project despite significant progress. Today, the same pattern repeats with pipelines like Trans Mountain, fueling Alberta's distrust in Ottawa's energy policies. Meanwhile, Alberta's political scene reflects these wider frustrations. A provincial by-election in Sundra has introduced an unusual candidate from the Alberta Republican Party, whose branding mimics the federal Liberals, an unpopular association in the province's conservative electorate. The use of Republican also stirs controversy, as it evokes U.S. political imagery largely rejected by Canadian conservatives. Both Sims and Gunter believe this candidate's missteps highlight the complexities and divisions within Alberta's push for greater autonomy. Premier Danielle Smith's sovereigntist stance remains more palatable to many Albertans, striking a balance between outright separation and firm demands for provincial rights. However, if Ottawa continues to stall resource projects and impose regulations seen as hostile, the separatist movement could gain renewed momentum. Energy policy clashes aren't limited to pipelines. The federal government's aggressive electric vehicle, EV, mandate is another flashpoint. Set to require 20% of new vehicles sold to be electric by 2026 and 100% by 2035, this mandate is widely criticized for being out of touch with Canadian realities. EV sales currently hover below 9%, and major manufacturers are scaling back production amid waning demand, especially after federal subsidies ended. Infrastructure and practical concerns dominate the debate. Canada currently has about 30,000 public EV chargers, but experts estimate that number must grow to 700,000 by 2035 to support full EV adoption. Achieving this would require installing tens of thousands of chargers annually, alongside massive upgrades to the electrical grid, none of which are actively underway. Many homes, particularly in regions with underground wiring like parts of Alberta, face prohibitively expensive rewiring costs, up to $16,000, to accommodate EV charging. Power generation is also a bottleneck. The transition demands dozens of new power plants, yet few projects are moving forward. The federal EV plan is seen by critics like Gunter and Sims as a political theater, an expensive virtue signal aimed at affluent Canadians, but unrealistic for average citizens, especially those in rural and resource-heavy provinces. They argue the government is imposing costly lifestyle changes without adequate infrastructure, energy capacity, or public support. Quebec's recent decision to ban replacement parts for internal combustion engine vehicles after 2035 further exemplifies this top-down approach, forcing residents to seek parts out of province and underscoring concerns over government overreach. Fiscal realities compound these challenges. Canada's debt surpasses $1 trillion, with interest payments already outpacing defense spending and set to overtake healthcare costs soon. The estimated $300 billion price tag to fully electrify Canada's vehicle fleet amid this debt crisis raises serious questions about economic priorities and sustainability. Despite government assertions, there are signs that federal officials may soon adjust the EV mandate. Environment Minister Julia de Bruin hinted at flexibility and potential modifications, acknowledging the policy's ambitious and contentious nature. Nonetheless, the current path reflects a political balancing act. Carney's administration seeks to appease environmental advocates while avoiding alienating the critical resource sectors that underpin Alberta's economy. The collision between Alberta's independence aspirations and BC's pipeline resistance symbolizes broader regional and ideological divides. Albertans demand genuine sovereignty over their economic destiny, frustrated by what they see as federal duplicity and provincial obstructionism. Meanwhile, British Columbia emphasizes environmental protections and cautious investment, wary of the social and ecological costs pipelines entail. As the political battles rage, the stakes are high, not only for pipeline approvals or electric vehicle mandates, but for the future cohesion of Canada itself. The simmering tensions risk boiling over unless meaningful dialogue and compromise emerge. Whether Alberta's sovereignty movement strengthens or fades will depend largely on Ottawa's willingness to respect provincial rights, deliver on infrastructure promises, and reconcile environmental goals with economic realities. In this critical moment, voices like Chris Sims and Lorne Gunter continue to spotlight the contradictions and challenges facing Canada's energy future. Their call is clear: stop political games, listen to the provinces, and craft pragmatic policies that reflect Canada's diverse needs and aspirations.